At precisely 10:35 on the morning of March 28, 1942, the Normandy dry dock at Saint-Nazaire ceased to exist. The detonation of 4¼ tons of high explosives hidden inside the bow of a destroyer transformed one of the most strategically important naval installations in occupied Europe into a crater of twisted steel and shattered concrete. The blast killed nearly 400 German officers, soldiers and sailors who had been inspecting the vessel just moments before, many of them vaporized instantly by the shockwave. The dock would remain inoperable for the next 6 years, never servicing another German warship during the conflict. This is not merely a story of heroism, this is the clinical dissection of a precisely engineered catastrophe, a chain of mechanical decisions, explosive chemistry, and timing mechanisms that transformed an obsolete American destroyer into the most devastating Trojan horse of the Second World War. To understand why this dock had to die, we must first examine the physics of German naval supremacy. The Tirpitz, sister ship to the Bismarck, displaced over 50,000 tons fully loaded. Her length exceeded 800 feet. Her beam stretched over 118 feet. These dimensions created a fundamental problem for German naval operations in the Atlantic. There existed only one dry dock on the entire Atlantic coast of occupied Europe capable of accommodating a vessel of this size, the Normandy dock at Saint-Nazaire. The dock measured 1,148 feet in length and 164 feet in width, originally constructed to service the French ocean liner Normandy. If the Tirpitz broke out into the Atlantic shipping lanes and sustained damage, her only option for repairs would be this single facility. The alternative would require running the gauntlet of the heavily patrolled English Channel or crossing the North Sea to reach Kiel in the Baltic. The British Admiralty reached a logical conclusion. Eliminate the dock, and the Tirpitz becomes strategically neutralized, forever trapped in Norwegian fjords where she could threaten convoys only within limited range. The weapon selected for this task was HMS Campbelltown, originally USS Buchanan, one of 50 obsolete flush-deck destroyers transferred from the United States to Britain in the Destroyers for Bases Agreement of 1940. The vessel had been built during the First World War, her design already antiquated by 1942 standards. Her displacement was minimal, her armament reduced, her operational value negligible. These very deficiencies made her the perfect candidate for destruction. The engineering challenge was precise: transform this aging warship into a delayed action bomb capable of penetrating one of the most heavily defended ports in occupied France, embedding itself in the dock gates, and detonating with sufficient force to render the entire installation permanently inoperative. If you find this level of engineering ingenuity fascinating, take a moment to subscribe to this channel, where we dissect the mechanical and tactical anatomy of history's most audacious operations. The conversion of Campbelltown began at Devonport Dockyard in early March 1942. The first modification addressed her silhouette. 2 of her 4 funnels were removed entirely. The remaining forward 2 were cut at an angle to resemble the raked funnels characteristic of German Moa-class torpedo boats. From a distance, particularly at night, the modified destroyer would appear German to casual observers. Additional modifications stripped unnecessary weight. Armament was reduced to 8 Oerlikon 20mm cannons positioned to provide anti-aircraft coverage during the approach. Armor plating was added around the bridge and gun positions to protect the crew during the anticipated close-range engagement. The explosive payload required the most precise engineering. Technicians installed 24 Mark 7 depth charges in the forward compartments, a total of 4¼ tons of Amatol high explosive. The charges were arranged in steel containers, then encased in concrete to conceal their presence and prevent detection during any cursory inspection. The concrete served a secondary function, directing the explosive force downward and outward toward the dock gates upon detonation. 3 separate fusing systems were installed to ensure redundancy. If one mechanism failed or was discovered, the remaining systems would still trigger the explosion. The fuses were set for a delayed detonation of approximately 8 to 9 hours after impact, providing sufficient time for the raiding force to withdraw before the explosion. The chemistry of the explosive payload deserves examination. Amatol is a military explosive composed of a mixture of TNT and ammonium nitrate in varying proportions. The variant used in Mark 7 depth charges typically contained 60% ammonium nitrate and 40% TNT. The ammonium nitrate provides oxygen to enhance the explosive reaction, while the TNT serves as the primary detonating compound. The detonation velocity of this mixture exceeds 4,000 meters per second. Upon initiation, the explosive converts almost instantaneously from solid to gas, creating a shock wave that propagates outward at supersonic speed. 4¼ tons of this material, detonating within the confined steel bow of the destroyer, would generate a pressure wave of catastrophic magnitude. The assault force consisted of 611 men total, a combination of Royal Navy personnel and Army commandos. The naval component would operate Campbelltown and 18 smaller craft, a mixture of motor launches and motor torpedo boats. The commando component, numbering approximately 265 men divided into demolition and protection squads, would assault specific targets throughout the dock complex. Each squad received precisely defined objectives: the pumping station, the winding house that operated the dock gate machinery, the dock gates themselves, additional fuel storage facilities. These targets were prioritized with surgical precision, as the pumping station and winding house were essential to the dock's operation. Without them, the dock would be useless, even if the gates could eventually be repaired. The convoy departed Falmouth at 1400 hours on March 26, 1942. The passage plan called for a circuitous route, first heading southwest into the Atlantic to avoid German coastal patrols, then turning southeast toward the French coast. The force would approach the Loire estuary under cover of darkness, navigating the shallow, sandbar-studded waters using detailed charts and the navigation lights of the channel. The timing was calculated to the minute. High tide at Saint-Nazaire would occur at 23:30 hours on March 27th, providing sufficient water depth for Campbelltown to cross the sandbanks at the river mouth. The ramming of the dock gates was scheduled for 01:30 hours on March 28th. The approach began at 2200 hours on March 27th. The convoy entered the Loire estuary in 2 columns, Campbelltown leading the port column, the motor launches distributed on either side. German shore batteries had detected the formation on radar, but initial assessments classified the contacts as friendly vessels. At 2300 hours, a German signal station challenged the approaching ships, requesting identification. Sub-Lieutenant Nigel Tibbets, the vessel's signals officer, responded using captured German codes and recognition signals obtained from a recently seized German patrol boat. The deception held for nearly 20 minutes, precious time that allowed the convoy to close within 2 miles of the dock before the Germans recognized the threat. At 23:42 hours, German searchlights illuminated the convoy and the shore batteries opened fire. The physics of the engagement became immediately brutal. The convoy was now within the engagement envelope of over 40 coastal defense guns, ranging from 20mm anti-aircraft cannons to 170mm coastal artillery. The motor launches, constructed of wood and powered by high-octane aviation fuel, were particularly vulnerable. Several erupted into flames within the first minutes of the engagement. Campbelltown increased to maximum speed, her 4 boilers driving her at over 19 knots, despite the shallow water and the incoming fire. The final approach required navigating between the Old Mole, a stone jetty extending into the harbour, and the dock gates themselves. At 01:34 hours on March 28, 1942, HMS Campbelltown struck the southern caisson gate of the Normandy dock at an estimated speed of 20 knots. The impact embedded her bow approximately 33 feet into the steel and concrete structure, compressing the forward compartments containing the explosive charges. The ship came to rest at an angle, her forward section lodged firmly in the destroyed gate mechanism. Lieutenant Commander Stephen Beattie, Campbelltown's commanding officer, confirmed the ship was firmly embedded and ordered the scuttling charges activated. The commando assault teams disembarked immediately. The assault on the dock installations began at 01:36 hours. Demolition squads rushed toward their assigned targets, each carrying prepared explosive charges designed for specific structural vulnerabilities. The pumping station, a facility containing massive electric motors that controlled the water level within the dock, was penetrated and destroyed within 20 minutes. The charges were placed against the motor housings and the main electrical conduits. The winding house, which operated the mechanical systems controlling the dock gates, received similar treatment. Explosive charges were positioned against the gear mechanisms and the steel cables connecting to the gate machinery. The physics of the commando demolitions deserve analysis. Each demolition team carried prepared charges ranging from 2 to 20 pounds of plastic explosive, depending on the target. The placement of these charges followed precise engineering calculations. Steel structural members require charges positioned at stress points where the explosive force will produce maximum shearing effect. Concrete requires penetration charges that direct the explosive force into the material rather than outward. The commandos had rehearsed these placements repeatedly on mock-ups constructed in England, timing their movements to the second. Subscribe now if you appreciate this level of tactical precision as we continue to examine history's most calculated operations. By 0230 hours, the tactical situation had deteriorated significantly. German reinforcements were arriving from throughout the Saint-Nazaire garrison. The motor launches that were supposed to evacuate the commando teams had been largely destroyed or driven off by the intense German fire. Of the 18 smaller craft that had accompanied Campbelltown, only 4 remained operational. The remaining commando teams faced a choice between attempting to fight their way to the surviving launches or escaping overland into occupied France. Many chose the latter option, though few would successfully evade capture. By 0300 hours, German forces had secured the dock area. The surviving British personnel were rounded up for interrogation. German officers examined the wreck of Campbelltown, still embedded in the shattered dock gate. The vessel appeared to be nothing more than an obsolete destroyer, converted for use as a ramming ship. The German assessment concluded that the raid had failed to achieve significant damage. The dock gates could be repaired. The destroyed pumping equipment could be replaced. The British had sacrificed hundreds of men for minimal strategic gain. This assessment was catastrophically wrong. Throughout the morning of March 28th, German activity around Campbelltown intensified. Curiosity drew officers and enlisted men alike to examine the captured vessel. Rumours spread that the ship's mess and storerooms contained quantities of chocolate, coffee, whiskey and cigarettes, luxuries in short supply in occupied France. German sailors and soldiers swarmed through the wreck, exploring every accessible compartment. A formal inspection team was dispatched to document the British modifications and assess whether the vessel contained any useful intelligence. This team examined the bow compartments but failed to identify the concealed explosives behind their concrete casing. At approximately 10:30 hours, over 40 German officers gathered on and around Campbelltown for an official inspection tour. Among them were senior naval commanders and Organisation TOT engineers tasked with assessing the repair requirements for the dock. The dry dock contained 2 German tankers that had been undergoing maintenance when the raid occurred. Work crews were already preparing to begin salvage operations. At 10:35 hours, the delayed action fuses completed their countdown. The detonation produced an explosive yield equivalent to approximately 4,000 kilograms of TNT. The blast propagated through the concrete-encased charges in microseconds, converting the solid explosive into superheated gas, expanding at over 3,000 meters per second. The forward section of Campbelltown ceased to exist. The steel plating of the hull fragmented into high-velocity shrapnel. The southern caisson gate of the Normandy dock, already damaged by the impact, was completely destroyed. The massive steel structure designed to hold back millions of gallons of water collapsed into twisted wreckage. The physics of the dock's destruction involved hydraulic forces as well as explosive ones. With the caisson gate breached, water rushed through the gap with tremendous force. Reports vary on the fate of the 2 tankers within the dock. Some accounts indicate they were swept to the far end of the dock by the inrushing water, but remained afloat. Others suggest they were sunk by the wall of water created by the breach. Regardless, the dock was now completely inoperable. The gate machinery had been destroyed, the pumping systems had been demolished, the winding house was in ruins, the caisson itself was shattered beyond repair. The human cost within the immediate blast zone was absolute. Everyone within 300 yards of the explosion died instantly. The approximately 400 German personnel on and around Campbelltown were vaporized, incinerated, or killed by the shockwave and shrapnel. Among the dead were numerous senior officers whose expertise would have been essential to any rapid repair effort. Also killed were 2 captured British commando officers who had been held on the dock and who knew the explosion was imminent but maintained their silence. Lieutenant Commander Beatty, captured earlier and now being interrogated at a German headquarters, heard the distant explosion. His German interrogators stared at each other in disbelief, suddenly understanding the true purpose of the obsolete destroyer they had been so casually inspecting hours before. Beatty maintained his composure, his expression revealing nothing. But the sequence of explosions was not yet complete. Motor torpedo boat 74 had approached the old entrance to the Bassin de Saint-Nazaire during the initial assault. Unable to complete its original mission due to heavy German fire, The MTB had launched 2 delayed action torpedoes against the old entrance gates before withdrawing. These torpedoes were equipped with timing mechanisms set for an extended delay, far longer than the Campbelltown charges. At 16:30 hours on March 30th, 1942, the first torpedo detonated against the old entrance gates. German forces, still attempting to recover from the Campbelltown explosion 2 days earlier, were thrown into chaos. While officers rushed to inspect the new damage, the second torpedo exploded. The psychological impact exceeded the physical damage. German commanders concluded that delayed action explosives must be concealed throughout the dock complex. Pandemonium erupted as French dock workers attempted to flee the area. German sentries, operating under orders to secure the perimeter, opened fire on the fleeing workers, killing approximately 250 French civilians. The Kriegsmarine commander ordered the entire harbour area closed for the remainder of the week. Search teams combed every structure, every vessel, every storage area for additional concealed explosives. The paranoia generated by this sequence of delayed detonations paralysed salvage and repair operations for days. The forensic analysis of the raid's effectiveness requires examining what the operation achieved versus what it cost. Of the 611 British personnel who participated, 169 were killed and 215 were captured. This represents a casualty rate exceeding 60%. Only approximately 227 men returned to England. The motor launch flotilla was effectively destroyed, with 14 of 18 vessels lost or damaged beyond repair. Against this cost must be weighed the strategic outcome. The Normandy dock remained inoperable for the remainder of the war, not returning to service until 1948. The Tirpitz, deprived of her only potential Atlantic repair facility, never ventured into the convoy lanes. She remained confined to Norwegian fjords, where she was eventually destroyed by RAF Lancaster bombers in November 1944. The German naval threat to Atlantic convoys was fundamentally altered by this single operation. The engineering precision of the Campbelltown conversion deserves particular emphasis. The explosive charges performed exactly as designed, detonating at approximately the predicted time with sufficient force to completely destroy the target structure. The delayed action fusing proved reliable despite the violent impact and the subsequent immersion in seawater. The concealment of the charges proved effective against German inspection efforts. The redundancy of the fusing systems ensured that the explosion would occur even if some mechanisms failed. The timing of the detonation, occurring at mid-morning when maximum German personnel would be present on and around the vessel, was either calculated or extraordinarily fortunate. The 8 to 9 hour delay placed the explosion during peak working hours rather than during the night when the dock area would have been largely deserted. The presence of 40 senior officers on the vessel at the moment of detonation eliminated significant German leadership capacity in the immediate aftermath. The secondary explosions from the MTB torpedoes demonstrated the psychological warfare dimension of delayed action munitions. The Germans could not know when or if additional explosions would occur. This uncertainty paralysed their response and prevented the rapid mobilisation of repair efforts that might otherwise have begun immediately after the Campbelltown explosion. The structural analysis of the dock damage reveals the completeness of the destruction. The southern caisson gate was not merely damaged, but destroyed. The gate machinery in the winding house was demolished beyond repair by the commando charges. The pumping station, essential for controlling water levels within the dock, was systematically wrecked. Even if the Germans had possessed replacement components for all these systems, the scale of the destruction would have required months of reconstruction. If you followed this forensic examination of Operation Chariot, consider liking this video and subscribing for more detailed analyses of military engineering and tactical precision. The chain of causation that led to this outcome can be traced to specific decisions and mechanisms. The selection of Campbelltown, with her expendable status and appropriate dimensions. The conversion engineering that modified her appearance while concealing 4¼ tons of explosives. The fusing systems that provided reliable delayed detonation. The approach tactics that achieved surprise until the final miles. The commando training that enabled rapid demolition of secondary targets. The torpedo launches that extended the psychological impact of the delayed explosions. Each element represented a calculated engineering decision. The failure of any single element might have compromised the mission. The success of all elements in combination produced the complete destruction of a strategically critical facility. The German failure to detect the concealed explosives represents a critical analytical gap. The inspection teams that examined Campbelltown were looking for obvious threats, visible charges, accessible fusing mechanisms, standard demolition equipment. The concrete-encased charges in the forward compartments did not match these expectations. The inspectors examined an obsolete destroyer modified for ramming and concluded they understood its purpose. They did not consider that the vessel's primary function was not to ram but to explode. The psychology of the German response reveals the effectiveness of the Trojan horse concept. The captured vessel became an object of curiosity rather than suspicion. The rumours of chocolate and whiskey in the stores drew sailors and soldiers to explore the wreck for personal gain. The official inspection tour brought senior officers aboard for professional assessment. The vessel appeared harmless, already disabled, already understood. The delayed detonation exploited this complacency with lethal precision. The physical evidence of the explosion was documented by German photographers in the immediate aftermath. The forward third of Campbelltown had been completely destroyed. The southern caisson gate was shattered, its steel plates twisted and fragmented. The dock walls showed blast damage extending hundreds of feet from the impact point. The water level within the dock had equalized with the river, flooding the previously dry facility. The tankers that had been under maintenance were either sunk or severely damaged. The long-term consequences extended beyond the physical destruction. German defensive resources were subsequently allocated to protect other potential commando targets. Coastal defenses throughout occupied Europe were strengthened. The psychological impact on German forces was significant, as the raid demonstrated that no installation was truly secure from British special operations. Hitler himself reportedly described the operation as the greatest raid of all, in recognition of its audacity and effectiveness. The technical legacy of Operation Chariot influenced subsequent special operations planning throughout the war. The concept of converting vessels into large-scale explosive devices was applied in other contexts. The methodology of delayed action detonation to maximize personnel casualties became a standard consideration. The integration of naval assault with commando ground operations provided a template for future combined operations, including elements of the Normandy invasion 2 years later. The forensic conclusion is unambiguous. HMS Campbelltown was successfully converted from an obsolete destroyer into a precision-guided weapon system. Her delivery to the target was accomplished despite substantial defensive opposition. Her delayed detonation achieved maximum effect against both structural targets and personnel. The secondary demolitions by commando teams ensured the completeness of the dock's destruction. The follow-on torpedo explosions extended the psychological disruption and delayed German recovery efforts. The Normandy dock at Saint-Nazaire died at 10:35 on the morning of March 28, 1942. It was killed by 4¼ tons of Amatol high explosive, delivered by a Trojan horse that looked like a defeated enemy vessel, but was in truth the most precisely engineered bomb of the war. The Germans who gathered on that dock in the morning sunlight never understood what they were standing on until it was too late. The explosion left no survivors within its immediate radius. The dock left no service to the German war effort for the remainder of the conflict. The Tirpitz left Norwegian waters only once, and then only to be sunk by British bombers. The chain of causation that began with a single engineering decision to pack an obsolete destroyer with explosives and ram her into a dock gate ended with the permanent elimination of Germany's most critical Atlantic naval repair capability. This was Operation Chariot. This was the greatest raid of all. This was forensic precision applied to the science of destruction.